I think today I didn't really handle myself quite well, mentally, I would say. So basically that's it. I was just making unforced errors. Like, I don't know, I have to check the statistics. I think she won the match not because she played incredible, just because I made all of those mistakes from, like, if you look from the outside, kind of like from an easy balls.
The tennis world just got flipped upside down. Again. This time, it's not about... To be honest, I was not in the right headspace today. I let the mental game get away from me, plain and simple. I was handing out free points like charity, just unforced errors everywhere. I would need to see the stats to believe how messy it got. She did not win because of some spectacular performance. I handed her the victory by missing shots that should have been walk-in winners. The entire landscape of the tennis world has just been turned on its head, and for once it has nothing to do with titles or rankings. We are dealing with a situation that transcends the boundaries of the sport entirely. Coco Gauff has exposed stunning comments from Aryna Sabalenka, words the association desperately wanted buried, and now the fan base is irate while the locker room is fractured. Will the governing body finally step up and impose consequences? Or is this destined to be brushed aside and forgotten, per usual? Okay, let us dive straight into the deep end, because honestly, this situation really stings. It is gut-wrenching, especially after playing lights-out tennis and grinding through the entire week. You battle past brutal opponents, take down an Olympic gold medalist like Iga, and then show up only to completely fall apart. It makes no sense. Honestly, if Iga had beaten me the other day, I truly believe she would have walked onto this court and taken the trophy home today. What began as a standard semifinal clash between titans Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka has morphed into the most grotesque scandal to hit the tour in ages. The drama unfolded right in the heart of the Wuhan Open. With a sold-out stadium and blinding floodlights, two warriors were primed for war in what promised to be a match for the history books. Yet, when the final ball was struck, the conversation was not about the breathtaking rallies or the final score. The only thing on anyone's lips was the verbal bomb dropped by Sabalenka. Initially, it flew completely under the radar. Broadcast feeds caught her whispering after dropping a key point, and to the naked eye, it appeared to be standard athlete venting. However, once the footage hit the internet, sleuths isolated the audio, slowed it down, and cranked up the volume. On playback, the truth became undeniable. This was not just venting, it was a slur blatant, unambiguous, and filled with prejudice. Social media erupted instantly, with movements like Stand with Coco and anti-racism tags dominating the feeds within hours. The tennis community was in an uproar, demanding accountability while fellow pros began quietly unfollowing Sabalenka en masse. Broadcasters were left stunned on air, unable to find words. But the real shocker was that the governing body said absolutely nothing. Zero press releases, zero acknowledgement, just a deafening void. Anyway, kudos to Coco on the win. When Aryna was in that chair, she claimed that if Iga had beaten her, Iga would have won the title today given the quality of the match. Do you feel your performance today was unbeatable? Like, it would not matter which opponent was standing across from you on the other side of the net? She essentially implied that had Iga reached the final instead of her, Iga would have taken the championship home, regardless of you being there. Yeah, I have to completely disagree with that assessment. I am the one sitting here holding the trophy, and not to throw shade, but the last time I faced Iga, I swept her in straight sets. So, honestly, I do not think that is a valid or fair claim for her to make. It seemed the world's premier women's sports body believed that by playing possum, the hurricane would simply blow over. But this tempest was stationary, because Coco Gauff, the very future of this sport, had been publicly insulted before a global audience. The world held its breath for a reaction, yet for 24 agonizing hours, not a peep came from her camp. Social media went dark, no posts, no statements, leading some to speculate her public relations squad was doing damage control. Others guessed she was grieving, but true fans knew the reality. She waits until she can command the room before speaking. When she finally broke her silence, the entire industry stopped cold, because in this game, predictability goes out the window. Look, considering Aryna's form over the past few weeks, she was undeniably the heavy favorite coming into this match. Facing her was the ultimate test. She is the #1 player on the planet, and that is exactly who I wanted to beat. Statistically speaking, that was the toughest challenge possible, even acknowledging Iga's history as a champion at this venue. Facing a sea of reporters in the press room, she stood with an aura of unwavering composure. Void of rage or sorrow, she possessed only focus, opening with a line that cut through the noise. "I seek no conflict, only justice." Those words carried more impact than a 100-mile-an-hour ace. The theatrics were gone, replaced by a demand for dignity. I have sacrificed too much to have my existence distilled into a slur. I am entitled to the same regard as any competitor on this tour. Simple equality, nothing more, and the silence that followed was heavy until it was broken by a wave of applause. Even the gossip-hungry journalists could only nod in agreement, knowing this transcended the game. Notably, she never even uttered her opponent's name. There was no need, as the target of her message was crystal clear to every soul in the room. She is likely reeling from the intensity of the moment, so I refuse to read too heavily into her reaction. I truly wish the public would cut her some slack. See, this distinction defines Coco. She avoided retaliation and refused to upload a tearful plea for pity. She simply spoke her truth with absolute dignity. But this is the point where the narrative becomes chaotic. Aryna Sabalenka's team went radio silent for 48 hours. Her rep refused to speak, her trainer vanished, and the association merely claimed an investigation was pending. That is corporate code for having zero strategy. Unfortunately, the destruction was already irreversible by that time. The moment that soundbite exploded online, the internet detectives began resurfacing ancient clips, previous conduct, and dodgy remarks from Aryna. Although a few loyalists attempted to shield her, the global majority refused to swallow that narrative. We dropped a point there. Discussing how digital platforms amplify your personal narrative, do you feel that ultimately your true character remains somewhat elusive to the public? Honestly, I believe the modern audience recognizes my identity as an athlete and as an individual. It seems understood that, sure, I bring aggression, I embody passion, and I maintain intense focus while chasing my ambitions. However, they also see the side of me that is lighthearted, kind, relaxed, and entirely distinct off the court. Therefore, I feel the world gets me now. Perhaps referencing that minor incident following Roland Garros where certain observers fail to grasp the sheer pressure involved. You drop the championship match at the Grey Six, most prestigious event, then immediately face the press while you are incredibly agitated and furious with your own performance, struggling to process the loss, so your mind is clouded when you utter that statement, and suddenly everyone erases their memory of your character during every other moment of your life. A primary defense mounted by her supporters was the claim that her intentions were innocent. That is the textbook justification, is it not? They blamed the stress, cited volatile feelings, and pointed to linguistic barriers. Right, as if bigotry becomes palatable just because you attribute it to a communication error. Watching a person stumble and choosing to define their entire existence by that single mistake. Following that event, I was forced to retreat, analyze the scenario, offer contrition, and clarify that my reaction was born purely from overwhelming sentiment. I admitted to being entirely in error, and it required significant time to articulate my true perspective more effectively. Yet today, I sense a deeper connection with the fans. That harsh experience ultimately provided invaluable growth in numerous aspects. Currently, the sensation of being wrongly perceived has completely vanished from my life. It feels like the public truly sees me now. However, let us be real. One does not simply stumble into uttering prejudice. Stress does not fabricate vocabulary you do not possess. It merely lowers the gate for your authentic beliefs to escape. That specific reason fuels the public outrage. The issue is not the isolated phrase, but the mindset fueling it. Conversely, Coco Gauff managed the crisis with veteran poise, though her mentor, Diego Moyano, disclosed that she broke down post-game. Her tears weren't for the defeat, but for feeling invisible despite outworking everyone, he noted, adding that seeing her value diminished to a single label shattered her spirit. Coco's mother and father were simultaneously devastated and bursting with pride. Rumor has it, her mother advised, elegance is not frailty, it is strength restrained, a phrase that transformed into Coco's guiding philosophy. By dawn the following day, she had returned to the baseline, skipping the press and retaliatory tweets to maintain pure concentration. An image of her marching into the facility, headphones secure, swept the internet with a caption that summed it up. Silence is her speech, grinding is her action. That single line encapsulates Coco Gauff. Now, we must address Aryna Sabalenka's reaction, or rather, the absence thereof. Following 72 hours of quiet, Aryna eventually uploaded a statement to Instagram, which, candidly, exacerbated the situation. Her update essentially read, "Competition spikes adrenaline. Interpretations get twisted. I never planned to cause pain. Let us proceed with dignity." It lacked contrition or responsibility, offering only a nebulous, "My mistake," which failed to sway the audience. A user remarked, "That is not an apology. That is an admission of getting busted." Someone else typed, "You took 3 days to draft this garbage?" A simple, "I am sorry" would have sufficed. They are correct, because when the blunder is this colossal, blaming adrenaline is insufficient, particularly in a game that prides itself on elegance and decorum, forcing the WTA to finally intervene. They issued a brief block of text claiming an internal audit was underway while citing inclusivity as a fundamental pillar. Essentially, that is boardroom jargon for "please let everyone forget this," but the tennis community refused to drop the subject. Icons started picking teams, with Serena Williams, Billie Jean King, and Naomi Osaka rallying behind Coco, declaring that the limit had been reached. Prejudice within this sport has been swept under the rug for far too many years. Even Rafael Nadal weighed in online, posting, "Honor precedes competition. Coco has conducted herself with the spirit of a victor." That remark ignited the internet instantly, though not everyone was on board. A faction of Eastern European players rallied around Aryna, suggesting the comments were lost in translation or blaming her limited English skills. Right, because apparently bigotry gets a pass if it comes with an accent. That flimsy shield shattered quickly, with most fans identifying it as a hollow excuse. As time marched on, the narrative evolved from a simple scandal into a watershed moment. Away from the spotlight, Coco's family acted as her silent fortress amidst the storm. Insiders revealed she was emotionally drained but resolute, refusing to let this episode become her defining legacy. Her father, Coco Gauff, stated to the press, "She is more than a great athlete, she is a superior human being. That integrity outlasts any championship trophy." History proved him right, as Coco began transmuting that agony into a higher calling. She started collaborating with groups dedicated to leveling the playing field in both sports and academics. She unveiled the Serve Right initiative, championing dignity and inclusion for future stars, declaring that justice is a birthright, not a gift. The manifesto went viral immediately, drawing endorsements from pros across basketball, football, and track and field. Youth academies and schools adopted her program as a blueprint for conduct, forcing even the WTA to formally recognize her impact. The league announced mandatory cultural sensitivity workshops for staff and athletes, a topic they had sidestepped for ages. It takes no detective to figure out who sparked that change undeniably: Coco Gauff. Do not be fooled, though. This did not magically fix everything, as Aryna Sabalenka's team was still scrambling for damage control. They alleged she offered a private apology to Coco, yet no confirmation of that exchange ever surfaced. Meanwhile, reporters hounded Coco about it incessantly, yet she parried every question with unwavering poise. "I have spoken my piece. My eyes are on the tennis now." That is a masterclass in ending a conversation with elegance and steel. While Aryna was uploading lukewarm regrets, Coco was out there dominating the court. She advanced deep into the next Grand Slam, demonstrating how to convert hurt into fuel, and the atmosphere began to shift. Spectators realized Coco had transcended the sport. She was now a symbol, and every match broadcast a message. Each victory resonated as a declaration, and the applause was about far more than just hoisting silverware. The crowd roared for her ideals: fairness, equality, and dignified power, leaving even her detractors with no choice but to nod in respect. She navigated the crisis better than veterans double her age, and when asked later how she kept her cool, her answer silenced the room. "My parents taught me that silence often rings louder than noise. I chose to vocalize only when the stakes were highest." That is the definition of class. She could have easily gone on a tirade or demanded suspensions. Instead, she solidified her reputation based on moral fiber, rather than just skill, which is the quintessential Coco essence. She refuses to engage in petty skirmishes. She rewrites the entire narrative. The subsequent weeks descended into absolute bedlam, as sponsors burned up the phone lines to the WTA, insisting on answers. Some threatened to withdraw advertising revenue from future events if the matter was not rectified, ramping up the pressure. This graduated from locker room gossip to a corporate emergency, and the media refused to let it die. Sports networks ran round-the-clock features on the feud, with pundits endlessly dissecting whether Aryna's words were a slip or a calculated insult. Yet, regardless of the spin, the outcome remained immutable. Aryna's brand was disintegrating, while Coco's stock soared, highlighting the irony that Coco never once sought to ruin her rival. She demanded no bans, simply spoke her truth and returned to the grind, a stance that won the public over entirely. The masses always value silent fortitude over noisy justifications. While Aryna's handlers attempted a cleanup operation with scripted interviews and posts about personal growth, the digital memory proved unforgiving. The reception she received each time she entered the arena told the whole story. Applause was sporadic or non-existent, culminating in an excruciatingly tense encounter at the following competition. With both athletes slated for the same media window, journalists attempted to stoke the fires by inquiring about any private dialogue. Coco merely smiled, noting, "We are all professionals here. My focus is on my game brief, sophisticated and impenetrable." In contrast, Aryna's talk of peace and progress felt mechanical, like lines fed by a handler rather than genuine sentiment. As Aryna fought to reconstruct her image, Coco was busy engineering a revolution. Her Serve Right campaign went supernova online, with children sharing snapshots of the slogan emblazoned on their gear. Educational centers began citing her journey as the ultimate curriculum on sportsmanship and respect. Her words caught fire, shared even by fierce rivals who had previously turned a blind eye to the racial undercurrents in the game. In a heartbeat, raw pain alchemized into undeniable power, and Coco Gauff secured far more than just the fleeting applause of the gallery. She single-handedly forced the WTA to overhaul their entire approach to taking ownership. They instituted mandatory cultural respect education for every pro on tour, a policy born directly from her composed, unyielding backbone. When the press grilled her on the update, Coco merely replied, "Change is a slow burn, but it burns nonetheless." That is her signature style, modest, profound, and always watching the horizon. So, the second she raised that Miami Open Championship cup, the weight of it felt different than a standard victory. She pierced the lens with her gaze and stated, "Taking the title is sweet, but fighting for a purpose that outlives you, that is the real prize." And that is how Coco took a moment of sheer ugliness and proved that grace is undefeated, even when the system fails to protect you.